something, Erica?
Hello, can you hear me? Well, ground nesting bees nest underground, and they dig holes in the ground and they lay eggs in those holes underground. And these pollinators are they're very different from social and insects in that they don't have a colony, they don't have a queen and workers, they're just one individual, one female by herself nesting underground with a bunch of her offspring. And they pollinate different things and sometimes pollinate things more effectively than their cousins, the honeybees and bumblebees. I think that we do sometimes, humans see themselves in bumblebees because they're social more so than other bees. But I think in a lot of ways that's misguided and can be a kind of dangerous path to go down, comparing ourselves to these social societies. I mean, they're social in the sense that they live together in a group, just like we do, but they're very different in that they only have like one queen who is the dominant reproductive individual, and like all of the workers that live there are all that queen's daughters. They're all sisters, and it's a very different societal setup than what humans have, and it's also like they are animals and they don't have the same ways of thinking and the same behaviors that we do. To be a bee, have I ever imagined that?
You're a ground bee.
I mean, I've imagined what it's like to fly, that's for sure. I think the life of a bee is kind of a dangerous and taxing life, I guess. All they do, they spend most of their day visiting flowers, collecting pollen, and kind of gleaning whatever nutrients they can from all of these flowers over and over and over and over. And I don't think that's quite the day that I would really want to be doing. I would hope I'm a little bit more relaxed than a worker bee, although grad school kind of, makes me feel like one sometimes, that's for sure. That's a more difficult question. I think like queen bumblebees are much more complex. When they first start colonies, they're kind of like the only one doing everything. They are laying the eggs, they're building wax, they're maintaining the nest, they're foraging for resources. They're just kind of spread thin and doing everything that they can, and they're just busy all the time. But then once they have workers, they undergo this physiological switch in which they basically just become egg layers, and that's all they do every day, all day, and they don't really do anything else. So that part sounds not very exciting for me personally.
A little domestic.
Yeah, I guess that does seem a little domestic for me. I don't really want to be just laying eggs all day. I like to go out and see the world and do things. I have tried to imagine flying. I actually just got a virtual reality headset in which there's one game that we can fly, and that's like the most exciting thing ever, to feel like I'm flying. No, it's not flying like a bee. It's just like me with my hands just like deciding where I'm going, and the vision is just crazy. And it's actually in the middle of like a galaxy with whales like floating in the stars and stuff. It's not very realistic, but it's pretty awesome. Most of the searching for bees that I've done has been looking for queens in the spring when they're first coming out of overwintering and they're foraging and collecting resources to start their new colony, the bumblebee queens. And at that time, they're very hard to miss. If they're in the area, you will find them. So they're maybe an inch long. They're really big, and they are very aggressive flyers. They're really fast and they're very loud. You can really hear them before you see them. So when I'm looking for bumblebee queens, I kind of just stand near a patch of flowers and wait for them, and if they're out, they will be there and they're very obvious. And then you just kind of swing your net around them and catch them if need be. I've seen a couple of very small flowers that I don't think are bee pollinated. The ones that I saw had a very deep they were trumpet flowers, and typically those are less bee pollinated because they require a really long tongue or proboscis or mouth parts in order to reach the nectar in the bottom. And bees, just the nature of their anatomy, can't often reach those nectaries. So those are more typically pollinated by like hummingbirds or something.
Okay, cool. I'm so surprised at how they're not just on the sides of highways, they're really actually...
They're like actual trees that are... Electric fence? What? Why? Access my backpack one side. Identifying a bunch, and like some of them are literally like 2 millimeters long and just black, nondescript. I would have sworn they were flies if I didn't know that they were bees.
Can they sting you?
Yeah, they almost never will though. Solitary bees, for the most part, are all capable, at least the females are capable of stinging. The males can't, but they have almost no reason to sting. Honeybees and wasps and some bumblebees will sting primarily to protect their colony. That's like usually the reason that they sting. Wasps are a little more aggressive and they just sting a little more frequently away from their colonies. When I first started studying bees, there were some bees that I had no idea were bees. They were maybe like 2 millimeters long and they just looked like little black specks, like little black flies or something. And I have since realized that there's a huge diversity of solitary bees. Like in the US, I believe there are about 4,000 species in North America of solitary bees, some of which are tiny little black specks, some of which are like fluorescent green. Some of them are green and black striped, or green and yellow striped. Most of them do not look like your characteristic, what people think of when they think of bees of black and yellow stripes. That's actually not very common in most bees. Yeah.
I wanted to be outside.
Yes, I absolutely chose Colorado College because I want to be outside, and because of the ability to go on lots of field trips because of their block plan schedule and really do active hands-on learning in that way. Sometimes there's water, but I don't know that right now. Well, we just hiked up Black Falls Canyon. I believe that's the name of it. Found a little riverbed where supposedly there was a waterfall, but it is quite dry. I was thinking if there's water, there's more likely plants that are greener and potentially could support more insects, and maybe something might be flowering, but it doesn't look like it. Pretty crispy. Google has led us astray. Supposedly it's a year-round waterfall, but I don't think that's true.
How are you doing?
Well, hey, if California keeps getting drier and drier, as it's in some places predicted to do so, well, fewer bees, bad for bees, potentially.
Yeah.
Finding ground bees is not an easy thing to do. Ground nesting bees, typically the solitary ones nest solitarily. So there's just one bee, one female going in and out of a little hole in the ground. So they're very, very difficult to find. Bumblebees are a little bit easier to find because they tend to have more individuals. Later in the season, they can have hundreds of individuals all coming out of the same entrance. So they're a lot easier to find. You just follow the bees. Is that a flower? That's totally a flower, except it's Yeah, it's a flower. I have no idea if it's bee pollinated or not.
This white one?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, so I don't know if it's pollinated by bees or not. Yeah, I don't know.
Can you tell by looking at the flower if it's pollinated?
No, you can't really tell by just looking at it what pollinates it. There are certain characteristic shapes